So, the White House Correspondents' Dinner, it's supposed to be one of Washington, D.C.'s most glamorous nights. But this year, it turned into something else entirely, pure chaos. In this explainer, we're going to piece together exactly what went down during that shocking shooting, who the alleged gunman is, and the baffling questions that still just don't add up. All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll jump right into the chaos inside that ballroom. Then, we'll try to figure out who is this guy, Cole Tomas Allen. After that, we'll look at the official response, put this whole thing into the context of other threats, and finally, we'll get to the big one, the motive. Okay, let's dive right into part one, the chaos at the dinner. I want you to just picture it. You're in the Washington Hilton Hotel. The room is packed with the biggest names in journalism, politics, even some celebrities. The night's supposed to be about speeches and jokes, right? Well, it turned into something much, much darker. Imagine you're there, you're at this black tie event, and suddenly you hear what a BBC journalist later described as the low, thudding sound that semi-automatic weapons make. I mean, that one description alone just paints this vivid picture of the sheer terror that must have ripped through that room as everyone dove for cover. And look at how fast everything happened that night. It's pretty startling. At 8:35 p.m., the shots are fired. Just about 45 minutes later, President Trump is already posting about it on Truth Social. And then, get this, less than 2 hours after the attack, he's at a podium addressing the nation. That incredibly rapid response really became a huge part of the story. So, in the middle of all that terror, the security plan actually worked. The president and first lady were whisked to safety, and the suspect was caught almost immediately. Amazingly, no guests were hurt at all. A Secret Service agent was shot at point-blank range, but his vest saved his life. And the dinner, of course, was called off right then and there. Which brings us to part two. Who exactly is Cole Tomas Allen? Because this is where the story gets really, really strange. You know, if you were to try and build a profile of a typical attacker, it probably wouldn't look anything like this. Cole Tomas Allen is 31, from a quiet LA suburb. And he isn't just educated, he's got a degree from Caltech, one of the most elite universities in the world, plus a master's in computer science. He was a teacher and a game developer. It's a background that just makes what happened next even more baffling. And here's the contradiction in a nutshell. In December of 2024, a tutoring service is proudly naming him Teacher of the Month. A little more than a year later, he's the lead suspect in an attack at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. It raises a huge question. How does a person go from that to, well, this? And it wasn't just some professional persona either. People who actually knew him paint the exact same picture. The head of a civic trust where Allen tutored called him intelligent, quiet, and nice, and said that the entire community was completely shocked. The more you learn about this guy, the less any of it makes sense. So what about a political motive? Well, his official record is pretty much a blank slate. In the last 10 years, he made exactly one political donation for $25. It went to Act Blue, a big Democratic fundraising platform, back in 2024. And that's it. Beyond that, he wasn't even a registered member of any political party. So you're left with this incredibly confusing profile of a suspect. And that brings us to part three. How did the authorities respond? Let's look at the official reaction in the hours right after the attack. Legally, the response was swift. They filed federal charges right away, including using a firearm during a violent crime and assaulting a federal officer. If he's convicted on just these two counts, Allen is looking at up to 15 years in prison. During that press conference later that night, President Trump relayed what investigators were initially thinking. He said the working theory, which he said he agreed with, was that the suspect had acted completely on his own, a lone wolf. And President Trump himself took a really hands-on role in managing the public story. He was quick to post on Truth Social that the shooter had been caught. Then, in the name of transparency, his team did something pretty unusual. They released surveillance footage of the actual attack and even a photo of the suspect on the ground. He also moved fast to project a sense of normalcy, promising the dinner would be rescheduled within a month. Now, this brings us to part four, and this is a really crucial piece of context. Because to really get the weight of this shooting, you have to understand that this was not an isolated event. Far from it. In fact, there's a deeply disturbing pattern of security threats against Donald Trump, all within just a couple of years. There was the assassination attempt at a rally where he was shot in the ear. Then there was a gunman found at his golf club in Florida. And then an armed man was shot and killed at Mar-a-Lago. So this attack at the Correspondents' dinner, it wasn't just one event. It was the latest in a string of really serious security breaches. When he was asked why he thinks these threats keep happening, President Trump offered his own theory. He framed it as an unavoidable consequence of his political impact, suggesting that when you're impactful, people will come after you. And all of this leads us to our final section, Part 5, the question of motive. This is the central mystery that hangs over the entire case, the one that investigators and the public are still trying to solve.
Officially, the motive is still listed as unknown. But, and this is a big but, CBS News reported that according to their sources, Allen actually told investigators he was specifically targeting officials from the Trump administration. Now, that claim has not been officially confirmed, but it definitely points to a potential political motive that just doesn't line up with his public profile.
So where does that leave us? We have an intelligent teacher from an elite university with no criminal past. His entire political history seems to be a single $25 donation. And yet he's accused of this violent, brazen attack at a major political event. The pieces just don't fit. And we're left with the one haunting question that still has no answer. Why?